It's been an unusual Christmas so far because for the first time in my 33 years on this planet, I have had to work on Christmas Day. It wasn't bad though. I went through different Christmas vocabulary, explained a little bit about my culture. High school students are quite smart, a lot of them. At least they understand English pretty well. There is a bit of a cultural divide, especially considering that I was out in the provinces outside of Hanoi this morning, and each class I asked them, do you know what day it is? And maybe it slipped their mind or something, and so I kept saying it. You know what day it is? December 25th. Very big, important holiday in the West, and people celebrate it here. Santa, trees. They didn't get it, or they were too shy, or some of them, they eventually got it and they're just, High school kids can be fun. They're every bit as sarcastic as I was at that age. Of course, thinking of students, and this is nothing to do with Christmas, but I think the most sarcastic and the students with the greatest attitude and the darkest sense of humor had to be my students in Saudi Arabia, who were all teenage boys. So anyway, I worked this morning, and it was a long ride out there and a long ride back, and I thought I had more classes this afternoon, but I had no way of getting there, so came back, and now I'm watching the sunset, but it is a bit overcast now. I think I was doing more or less the same thing. I remember last year it was a bit colder, and I spent more time downtown. I don't know. I went to a bar last night and had a couple drinks, and I was just staring at the lights and stuff. And I knew a couple of people who worked there, I guess, but I didn't really know anyone at the bar. And it was quite dark and quite desolate, and it was kind of like Bud Baxter in that great movie The Apartment with Shirley MacLaine. And I just thought, no, this is kind of gross, and so I finished my drink, and they gave me just a small cup of mulled wine, and I finished that. And yes, I drove home. I wasn't drunk. It was over the course of a long time. But I thought, in November I gave up alcohol for a month and didn't drink anything, and I felt great afterwards. And it was sort of like the first comes around and you say to yourself, oh, why not? I mean, I remember it being good, but maybe this is one of the few times when the Quran was actually right in saying that it's, no matter how good it makes you feel, it's not worth the trouble. And it's not a huge trouble in my life, of course, but it's still expensive, and it's kind of a waste of time. There are different levels to it, though. I mean, some people are actually quite sick from drinking, and I admire anyone who refuses to drink, even if it doesn't make them sick. I think, of course, of a few spiritual leaders, including, and for some reason, well, I can't really pronounce his name, but he's the I'm not even going to try. That's how poor my Vietnamese is. But he wrote Living Buddha, Living Christ. He was a friend of Martin Luther King. Nhat Thich Nhat Hanh? Hanh, maybe? That sounds right. I can spell it, but I can't pronounce it exactly. But he said in Living Buddha, Living Christ that he didn't drink simply because it gave others strength around him, because his refusal helped others refuse as well. And so this isn't even like a New Year's resolution. This is more of a Christmas resolution. I'm going to put down the sauce for a little while again. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm not terrified of it. I'm just going to make more and more videos, I think, because it's amazing, like, the therapeutic effect it's had. And I think, like, I've been broadcasting now. I've been making videos for 6 months, and it started out just as once a week, and I would stress out about it, and it would take me like hours. It would take me all day to do it. But last summer I wasn't working, and I had lots of time, so it was a fun way to it was a fun diversion And of course, when Milo's book came out, I went out and read that right away. And that video actually got a few hits. And it looks much cleaner than any of the shit that I'm making lately. But, I'm making this stuff because, again, it's sort of a self-serving thing. It's like there's something therapeutic about seeing myself on camera later and hearing all this stuff that just stays trapped in my head most of the day. That I am thankful for, Mr. Santa, or Satan, as I called you in my lessons. I showed my students, I would write Dear Satan on the board, and the smart ones, they would chuckle and they'd get it, and then they would have to explain, yes, Satan is the devil. And that's funny to me as a language teacher, because that's a very common mistake that children make. And I've seen pictures of that online where written out in crayons or in marker, the kid writes Dear Satan when they're trying to write Dear Santa. That's something that I find hilarious, and it's good to find things like that hilarious, because humor like that is pretty flat, pretty cold fish where I'm from. It's amazing like how your humor and your sense of the world tapers off after you've been overseas a while. Like how it seems so natural that not only I was working, but my bus was full of people, and everyone was working. And that's not how I remembered it last year, but it's just a sign of how our perceptions just influence everything. Like, oh, well, I'm here in Vietnam, and I'm seeing this, and I'm experiencing this, so this must be the way that it is. And that's why, okay, never let me turn this channel into just a travel blog. Like, I want to talk about stuff, but man, I want to talk about tourist destinations and shit like that. And I've seen channels where people get on camera and talk about what it's like to live in the exotic East, and they show food and everything. And it's like, well, I could talk about Vietnam for hours, and over the course of time I probably will. But I'm not here to entice anyone to come out here. I'm just saying that it works quite well for me, so that I can focus on things like talking about current events and Twitter and YouTube and things that really matter. Hallelujah. What else? So yeah, over the course of 6 months, just seeing, like, I initially was trying to do some of that artsy stuff, but I think it's just better just to speak from the heart, because I saw 2 videos that told me to do it this way. First it was, and I forget which exact video, but it was Stick Saxonhammer. Like, he said it's good to just get on camera and just talk and talk and talk. And simply doing that makes you better at it. And that's one thing I've learned, is that it's just the more I do it, the easier it gets, the more fun it gets. And the easier it is to open my heart, and the easier it is just to say what's on my mind. And Stefan Molyneux, he also said, someone called him and just sounded suicidal and just said, look, man, I just don't know. There's no point to it. The world is just going to hell. And he just cited all these things that he was hearing in the news and things that he was thinking about, and just this distorted perception of just the world crumbling down all around him, and just feeling completely helpless and wanting just to back away from it all. And Stefan said, well, you're here. When you have the time, get your message out there. What's wrong with you? Say what you feel. Get it out there. I mean, you might be able to change things. You might be able to push things in a different direction. You might be able to change the course of reality if you just had the nerve to just open up and start talking. And so that's the greatest Christmas gift of all. It's like, dear Satan, I don't need anything, Mr. Satan. I've got everything, because my whole life I think I've just wanted somebody just to hear what was going through, what I was thinking just as it was coming. I've always been the receptive end, and that's sort of been like my careers over time, like as a social worker, and then a taxi driver, and now as a language teacher. So much of my work is based on listening, and that's so much of my identity, and that's such a skill, and people don't realize that it's a skill. And I think that same skill applies not just to speech, but to music and to everything. Everything that you could and would hear. But speaking's a different matter. And it's like the extreme sense of how children understand more than they are able to say. Well, my friends, I'm just looking for the words, and my gift is all of you. It's anyone who is listening right now. That's my gift. My gift is the fact that someone took a little bit of time to listen to me. Merry Christmas.